Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Writer's Block. My name is Todd, and this
My
is
name and my name is Andy.
so we are aspiring young authors from Florida. Unnecessary
Uh,
information, I suppose, but we're trying to. What would you say we're trying to do? Trying
we're trying
to.
to get it. We're trying to get our work out into the public's eye, and also like try to get ourselves noticed so we can sell and hopefully one day become successful writers and not have to, have a 9 to 5 job per se. We can solely live off of our writing, and that's it.
Certainly, that is the dream. I think for most writers, that's the dream. It's like a distant dream because it's a tough competition out there. If you're a writer yourself watching this, you probably know that. Um, I think another thing we want to do is like start a unique conversation, I guess, about like different writing styles and possibly like uh, get like a base of people who are also writers or want to be writers, or maybe they're established writers, and then uh, we can all learn from each other, and then possibly we can all become highly successful, super rich, mega authors. Like Stephen King and uh, James Patterson, and you know, uh, make awesome books that become even more awesome movies, or sometimes more awesome movies. You think you, you've read books that were turned into movies, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
And 9 times out of 10, they're not anywhere near as good as the book. I have to say the one book that was pretty spot on was Holes.
uh,
That was I mean that was pretty good because I know they had the author like sit in on with like the shooting of the movie and then the written part too, like the script, and he tried to milk in bits and pieces
yeah,
of like how to get it to work
yeah.
properly.
I think it's like for like novel to movie transitions or adaptations, I guess it definitely seems to be like super important to have the author on board. I never read the book Holes, but that movie is extremely underrated. I think it's pretty a pretty good movie. Um,
We had to read it. I'm from upstate New York, so I had to read it in seventh grade. It was required to read that, and then we had to annotate it. And I think we only watched like a scene or two to kind of like study the differences from the movie and the book.
yeah, I well, one of the books I had to read. I'm from Central Florida. Uh, yeah, one of the books I had to read was To Kill a Mockingbird. Is that what it was? Yeah.
I had to read that too.
Yeah. I have you seen the movie? The one with I guess Gregory Peck.
Yeah,
It's a little different, but still, pretty. I mean, it is an adaptation that I think was true to the message of the book. I also read one of the first instances of a book that I read that was turned into a movie was The Hunger Games. Like I read those that series back in high school, and uh, I think initially I thought it was a good adaptation. I mean, it's been a long time, so I can't really remember exactly, but toward like the farther along it went, the less I felt like it was really. I can't remember exactly, but yeah. Speaking of books, do you have any favorite books or a favorite book that you know?
I don't have a favorite. I mean, there's a long list of good ones that I've read. I mean, this one that I recently finished, one of James Patterson's newer ones. Disregard the if you're watching this, disregard the chewed out book zipper from my cat. It was called The Coast to Coast Murders. That was good. It was the chapters were broken down by point of view, and the transition was pretty. It was really well written, so you understood who the point of view was coming from. Because I read a book previous from him, and he kind of did similar things, and it didn't really work as well because you kind of confused to who the point of view was and what they were talking about because he jumped around so much. But the way he wrote that book was spectacular, and it was really interesting. It was hard to put down. I mean, that's very cliche to say, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah. I've only had maybe a handful of books that were like that for me, where I would read late into the night, and then any free chance that I had. Um, I have a. I mean, for me, like one book that was like that. I mean, I've got a couple books that are like on my top, but this was one that was like that. It's called "Call Me by Your Name" by Andre Ackerman or Asman. I still don't know how to pronounce his name, but this one it's about like a romantic relationship as it like they're over like one summer in Italy, and it it's from like a first person perspective, I think, and so you kind of like you get a unique insight into the character as they go through the motions, and it was a tough one to put down uh, until it was over, of course. Then I was like, oh, now I'm left with that empty feeling of not having a book to read. But one of my
Does he write similar? Does he have like sequels to that book or like a series, or
uh,
is it more of
um
bounce around?
he he wrote a kind of sequel. It's actually this one right here, if you can see it. It's it carries on the story, but I I have mixed feelings on it. Sometimes it's hard to like make a direct sequel that really uh, lives up to its predecessor, and that sequel kind of does, but it doesn't. No, it doesn't really. To be honest, like it. Yeah, I can't. I would say like if you've read like this book and you haven't read the
Mhm.
sequel, you're not really missing out on a whole lot. I mean, there's you know, unless you're yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to say that it's really all that great. I think they
So
just
it's like 85% of all sequels to movies. They're not as good as the original.
yeah. I mean, it's real hard, I think, to make a good sequel. Like I looking at my uh, books, I can't think of any sequels that were um, that really stood out. You know, not that I've read that many. I mean, I thought, like, I guess with the Hunger Games, the books, you know, kind of progressed, but that's sort of different. I think they were planned that way. Whereas, like with this book, like that the sequel to it wasn't planned prior to this book. Um, the one,
See, I never read the Hunger Games, so I couldn't really.
yeah,
I'm
it,
assuming that it's like based or not like written kind of like Harry Potter, where it just gradually progresses and there's new ideas. I've never read Harry Potter either. I've only read like the first book of Harry Potter. I get crucified for that almost all the time.
yeah, it's. I want to read Harry Potter, but I mean, it's a lot of books, and I don't have a lot of time these days. Uh, but yeah, I also kind of get crucified. I mean, it's one of those books where it's like, what? How did you not read those books? That was my childhood. It's like I don't know how. It's kind of like how I missed out on a lot of Disney movies as a kid. Like I've never seen The Lion King. People are like,
Really?
well, here we go. Yeah.
Huh.
How have you
I mean,
never
I
seen The
won't
Lion King?
crucify you for you, but that's
Yeah,
well,
I
like I know I've only seen like
I watched the
uh,
Rugrats. I
that is
mean,
very fair.
I don't know why, but that's just how my childhood rolled out, I guess. But any other books that are in your top
I
five or something like that?
um I have I don't have a book, but I have a series by Robert B. Parker. He's one of the authors I'm going to touch on a little bit later, but it's the Jesse Stone like series, and that's very I like those a lot. Those are my favorite series that I've read so far. I need to expand. I mean, I'm very keen on mystery novels, so that's what I like lean towards and stick towards because I'm used to them and I enjoy them. But I know I've noticed. I don't know about you, but sometimes it's like, okay, I need to get out of the realm of solving crime and like expand my, I
Um,
guess, palette of reading and literature.
I guess it depends. I mean, like I kind of stick with my genres mostly. Like I don't even know if I've ever really like most of the books I have range from like you know I don't know, like there's like some adventure action books. Like I've got Dune. Like I haven't read this one yet, but I want to. It's on my list. Books like that, fantasy books like Game of Thrones. Then I've got like young adult books. I guess I don't know if this is technically young adult, but like Little Life. It's a book about like four friends trying to live in New York City and follow their dreams. Books like that, I kind of enjoy. but I generally like stay in that same I don't know, whatever you call it, genre. Uh, I guess like, unless you consider, like I read some non-fictional books for school, usually political, but I don't know. I'm kind of confined to those genres. I haven't had much of an interest to escape as of yet.
Do you think it's important to escape from like our everyday, used to genres, or
And not necessarily. I mean, um, the part like I guess it depends. Like, why do you read? And part of like for me, reading is like, I mean, partly it's an insight into other people's lives. Partly it's an escape from the present reality, and some combination of those two, I guess. So like, if a different genre could do that, then I would, I guess. But I don't know. Like I like action, not action, but for me, like uh, detective novels. Like I don't like dislike them. I guess I just haven't had a super huge interest in them. Probably like I don't like you probably don't have like a super huge interest in like young adult books. I'm guessing. Like I probably shouldn't be reading those since I'm not that much of a young adult. But like you know,
I mean, I've always like thought about going back and rereading Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events just because I enjoyed them the first time, and I haven't read them in probably over 10 years.
yeah,
And if you could read them in order and kind of see how it progressed and like maybe hone in on how he writes, and that's another person you can lean on as a resource, then I'm all for it. I mean, I'm not going to go out and read young adult books all the time, but if it's a
yeah.
certain
Well, here's a question:
author or style,
how do you define young adult or like the genre? Because like
I
this
guess
book, I think it's considered a young adult book, but like it follows a group of friends like well into their later lives. So I don't know if like I don't know. It just seems like a
I
I don't know. Maybe
guess
I'm not sure what the proper definition is, or if my definition is incorrect, or
I mean
um,
that's a I don't know if there's an actual definition. You'd have to look it up, but I mean, for me, it'd probably be the writing style and then the use of words and um, well, I mean, when I
yeah,
say use of words,
yeah,
it's like they're not. It's
sentences too.
easier to understand. Yeah, they're used. It's used to understand, a little easier to comprehend rather than articulating.
I see what you're saying.
More hardcore, not
Yeah,
hardcore, but
more like
adult-like sentences.
yeah, or like I like it's more obvious, I guess, some of the messages, whereas like and like I guess I don't know how you would describe it, but like other books or literature, the message might be implied, and you have to kind of understand that as opposed to it being like told directly in the exposition or the dialogue. But speaking of books, since we're on the topic, here's another book I like. Didn't get to mention it earlier. Into the Wild, John Krakauer. I mean, it's kind of I don't know if it's fiction or nonfiction, to be honest. It's based on, I guess it's fiction. It's based on a true story, and I guess parts
They
of it
make
might,
that into a movie.
yeah, yeah. Came out in 2005, 2006. Um, Pretty good movie. I mean, I think the movie was pretty true to the actual story as well. Um, but it's like this guy basically, like, I think his mindset is he wants like uh, cashless, classless society. He kind of has this like really not so normal worldview of things, and he just kind of like drops everything and leaves his house. He comes from like a privileged background, wealth, nice school, all paid for and everything. He kind of just leaves it to go what he calls like tramping across the country, just walking, sleeping in wherever, getting a job here and there. It's kind of it's a really interesting story of just kind of like leaving behind the you know whatever reality that you have, and then kind of escaping that for some sort of idealized uh, uh future, I guess, or something like that, and then it doesn't go so well for him. If you've read the book, maybe I shouldn't spoil endings.
I've
But
never read the book, but I know a lot of people like when it was really big, when it was coming into a movie, they were promoting that you should read it. Is that considered young adult too?
probably, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
'Cause
it reads almost like a documentary in a way, where like the author's kind of just explaining the events that happened, and but I mean, I think it's a good read. I think I don't know why this book. It's one of the probably that book probably had the largest impact on me after I read it, and I can't remember when I read this. I think I might have read it in school. I don't remember, but I remember wanting to go to the bus. There's actually a picture here. That's I have a terrible camera, so it's probably hard to see, but uh, he stayed in that bus for a while, and a lot of people were like making pilgrimages to the bus in Alaska, and then it's middle. You know, like if you look at Alaska on a map, it's like one big giant wilderness, you know. And so the bus is like out there somewhere. So naturally, people didn't know what they were doing, and they died. So they had to move the bus. But yeah, fun little side venture there with that book.
I've never heard of that. I didn't
Really?
know that you could actually go to, yeah, didn't know that was an actual thing.
Yeah. Well, that's that the that bus was okay. Spoiler alert! If you haven't read the book, I'm gonna
I I
for
can
the
take
audience mostly.
I bet you I feel like a lot of them can kind of put two and two together, but go ahead.
The bus was the final resting place for him. He died there, and so kind of going to that bus for some readers was like I don't know, it was some way to connect in a way. Um, it was in, I think I don't know where at, it was somewhere in Alaska, north of Mount McKinley, apparently. But the bus they moved to I think it was University of Alaska in Fairbanks. They have a little museum there, so now you can go and see it without possibly dying from you know the ice cold wilderness or the bears or the poison berries or what have you. But yeah, that book probably has had the most impact on me. I always thought it was cool that he just kind of like left behind everything to do what he wanted to do, even if it may not have had the outcome that he expected. You know,
I guess if we're on the topic of books that like impacted you, we can hone in on like what we read in like school. And could you like name like your top two or three, like off the top,
oh, books from
like
school.
book from school that had like a little bit of it? Like they don't have to have like a monumental, like, oh, this changed my life, because nine times out of 10, when you're 14 trying to read, 30 pages of homework, you're not really going to be into it as much as right now, like as a 25, 26-year-old adult or even
For,
older.
yeah, well, I think this book I did read in high school, but one other book I read in school that was pretty good was like that caterpillar book from elementary
Like
school.
the kids book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good book. Okay, failed joke. I get it. All right. Books that I read. Like I read. What was that book based off of the Salem witch trials? The Crucible. I read that in high school.
I
It was
never read that.
it was originally a play and it was turned into a book, and it was actually a tough read for me. I think I don't think I was like fully into it, but when I was in high school, I wasn't like that big of a reader. Like the only books that I read in high school that were like that I really put effort into reading were the Hunger Games. And after that was over, I was like, not again for 5 years. Um, but I did like, I don't know, I can't think of any books in high school that really like stuck with me. I do remember a lot of the books. Like I also read The Great Gatsby in high school. That one was
Yeah, we
interesting.
read that. I need to
Um,
reread that because I know how it, ends, but I think that was another one of those books where you're just kind of like, okay, I have to skim through this because I have other homework I need to do.
I
I mean, that's
recently,
interesting for our listeners too. Like, did you actually read these books in high school, or is it like everybody else in the cliche, I'm going to go online and find like the
oh
adaptation
yeah,
of like
Spark
the
Notes.
chapters?
Yeah,
Spark Notes, yeah, that's what the word is.
I recently bought the books. I want to read it as well, but I don't know where it's at. I honestly like it. High school was like a while back, like 8 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
my memory hasn't My memory is not what it used to be. Uh, I don't. I remember like for the Crucible and for the Great Gatsby, like reading it was kind of a chore. So I probably did use. I probably did look at Spark Notes or just not read at all. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the outcomes. Um, I
But
can't
you
think
would
of.
go back and reread it again now. Well, I mean, not now because you have, you know,
Yeah,
schoolwork you have to do. But as an adult, would you go back and reread some of those?
yeah, The Great Gatsby. Yeah, that one I want to read if I could find the book. I mean, I have a stack of books that I want to read. Like I use this app called Goodreads, I think, and I have like a want to read list on there. I have it all categorized and line, and I've got way too many books. I mean, I've bought like
Sponsor us.
yeah, yeah, maybe someday. um, it's actually a pretty helpful app. I mean, you can yeah, yeah, I'll save the ads for when they're sponsoring us. But uh I got a lot of books I want to read. I got a lot of classes I'm taking though, so um, maybe over like winter break. But I still want to read Dune, and I want to read that before I watch the movie. And the movie comes out this December, so that's you know, it's only a few months away, but time flies. It's like an old saying, like the older you get, the faster time goes by, and it seems to be true. At least ever since I was told that.
I can definitely see that as an actual, you know,
Yeah,
proverb or whatever you call it.
yeah, pretty much. It's yeah, terrifying in a way. But
Hmm.
what about you? What other books did you read in school?
One of them that was pretty good was in sixth grade was Hatchet. Did you ever heard of
Oh,
that?
yeah, you're right. You know what? Hold that thought
That's
because
another young adult book that I would read.
I
For the
forgot about that book.
viewers or for the people who are just listening, Todd also has that book.
Yeah, yeah. I have a number of books that I read. It's funny. I have a bunch of books here that I actually read in elementary school that actually did stick with me, and I completely forgot to mention them, even though they're right here, right next to me. But you ever read this, City of Ember?
Uh,
I read it in like fourth grade. It was a
you read that in fourth grade?
yeah. I mean, it's a kid's book. I mean, it's
Oh, I don't think I've ever
ages
read that one.
8 to 12. Yeah. I mean, it was I read that, and then I went and read the rest of them in the years that followed. It's a collection of 4 books. Um, really good. I think there's actually a sequel to Hatchet that I wanted to get.
There is. I've never read that, but I
Me
heard
neither.
it was like I think he got lost again,
Yeah.
or
How does he
he
keep
got
doing
stranded
that?
again. I
He's
like
like he's
because the
got a
first
hatchet,
time, is because the pilot died and crashed, and I think it was the Canadian wilderness,
Oh yeah.
and he survived, and then I don't know what I think the second one's the same thing. It'd be interesting for our listeners to comment if they've ever read the second one and what it was about, because I don't even know what it's called, to be honest with you.
Probably Axe. But my question is like, how how do you get into 2 accidents? You'd think that maybe you'd be a little prepared, but I don't know. Who knows? But
Uh,
another book. But unless you got some more.
I was just going to say for the author, that's kind of like it's a push for me personally. If you're going to have the same kid, if you're going to start another book, you're going to have the same kid get lost in the woods again. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, I think it's a one hit wonder sort of thing. I don't know what other people think, but for me, it doesn't sound as enticing
Well,
as the original.
it depends. Like it. So like they say that like all stories are just rewritten versions of previously existing stories. So like you can make it work, but you have to freshen it up in a way that makes it seem like it's new and original. Not just like a new geography or, for example, like a new climate. Because I know like Hatchet, it was really cold, freezing in the wilderness. So maybe he was alone too, right? He was traveling.
Yeah.
So if you can somehow maybe add in new
Well, the first
characters.
one, he wasn't, he crashed. Like the pilot was dead.
Yeah,
They also made a movie on that we watched. I do remember that.
I did not know there was a
They
movie.
didn't. There
Oh,
was a movie.
yeah, but he was surviving on his own, though, right? Like Pilot's dead. He
Mhm.
took what he could and just survived after that. So you could add in new people, you know, new characters, and then I mean, you get or better yet, I mean, don't have him be in a second plane crash. That's kind of dumb. But maybe a natural
Well,
disaster.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know if there was a plane
Or
crash in the second one, but
or he could be with, like you said, a group of friends and get lost. Like they went on a hike or something and get lost, and he's like, "Oh, I know what to do." But still, it's not
yeah,
as.
I think a good story that would actually be kind of probably more relevant and worth reading today would be like him with a group of survivors in a natural disaster in a town that's maybe completely cut off from the outside world, and where maybe you've got wildlife coming in. That's a bit more of a better premise, I feel like, to build off of a new story. But again, I want to say I have no idea what any of the details are about the second book, so very well I could have just described it. But
Well, while you're continuing to talk about your book, I'm going to look it up and see what it's called.
well, in the meantime, I'm gonna talk about another book that I read in elementary school that I really enjoyed. It is The Extraordinary Adventures of Alfred Crop. It reading the back of the book, it's so cliche, but this book, when I was reading it back in 2005, apparently, um, I loved it. I mean, it was a action book. The kid becomes the hero for some stupid reason. There were, I think, two sequels that followed. I read them all, but this is the only book I still have. I got it at a Scholastic book fair. I don't know if you had those in. Uh,
We did.
yeah, okay,
We're
yeah,
upstate. Yes, we did. Those were like the book fairs were. That's where you would get all your cool sports posters, or
yeah.
like me, I would get like a poster, but then I'd get a book. Like most of my friends would just get the cool the posters or whatever, because they didn't really like to read. But yeah, those were fun.
Mm,
Those
I,
were like the first introduction to, I guess, bookstores for me anyway.
yeah, I kind of wonder because like I'm thinking 10-year-old me. I don't read as a 10-year-old that I can remember. So I go into this book fair and I grab this one. Why did I grab this one? There are hundreds of books there. I grabbed this one. I don't know why, but something it's on my mind right now. But I picked the right book because it was darn tootin'. But yeah, these couple books are pretty good. Like I want to reread them, but at the same time, like I have other books I want to read, and these are all technically children's books. And nothing against rereading
You
children's books. They'd be an easy
you
read.
could
Like this Hatchet book's only
you could
200 pages.
technically reread those. You could reread those because they're probably faster.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean
what I
this one's
mean? Then
200 pages, and it's like I don't know, the font or the spacing's like 1.5, not too like bunched up.
huh.
I wonder what other
Well,
books.
I found it, and there's more than one sequel to this book.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple.
It was there's the other novels is The River. Well, this is according to Google search.
Yeah,
This is young adult fiction. The River, Brian's Winter, Brian's Return, and Brian's Hunt.
man. Well, that sounds like quite a life Brian had.
And the series is called Brian's Saga.
What's interesting? This Hatchet was published in 1987. I always thought it was newer than that
So it looks like
until I bought the 30th anniversary edition of the book.
The River's the next one. Then Brian's Winter, which now that I've said that, I've heard of that one before. And then The Return, it has a picture of like the book cover is a picture of a plane. So I'm assuming, based off of context clues, he's going back to his original spot where he
Yeah.
got lost. Hopefully he doesn't crash in this one again, because I would never want to go flying with this kid if he's like 2 for 2 on airplane crashes.
Well, here's an interesting idea. Let's say, so he survives his initial crash back in 1987. Several years goes by in those couple books, and maybe like regular life, it just isn't for him. So he wants to go back to the wilderness with his hatchet and live off the land. He wants to do
Isn't that what you call fan fiction?
what this guy wanted to do. Honestly, I haven't read any of the sequels, so that's
That could be something we could do. and talk about it in future episodes.
Fan fiction.
No, not fan fiction, but read
Oh yeah, yeah. I
like
mean,
a
it could.
book at a time.
Yeah.
Or if someone else has read it, comment and be like if it's like any good or if it's not even worth it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely it's definitely an idea. Yeah. Um, got me thinking about fan fiction now.
Well, I mean, the discussion we just had and how you just created that scenario is kind of what fan fiction is it not?
Fan fiction. I feel like fan fiction has a really negative connotation to it. I like, it's always like, oh, fan fiction. Like they took these two characters from this story and then did some inappropriate things with them, or whatever. But like, I don't know, you can make some neat stories using existing intellectual property, so to speak. I feel
I've
like
never read a fan fiction. I mean, I don't know how accessible they are.
yeah,
I've never written anything like that or read anything like that before.
full
So,
disclosure, some of the first stuff that I wrote, like not published stuff, but like just when I was writing for myself, was like, I think it technically is classified as fan fiction, but it was, I try to like not, I try to differentiate it from like anything that gets like a negative feedback on it. Like I took characters and a setting from an existing video game series, and I just made new stories that I thought were kind of like that I thought were cool at the time. I mean, reading back at it like years later, it's all trash, but like at the time, I'm thinking like I'm making my own story, my own video game in a way, using their characters. And the funny thing, I would use their names, but like the characters themselves were nothing like the characters in the video game. The characters are actually kind of like, I don't know, like empty. They didn't have character. They were just two-dimensional. But like now it's I consider it part of my like learning process over the last 12 years of writing, I guess.
well,
But
side note for the people who don't know, Todd is a published author, unlike me. So I am like the beta of this podcast. He is the alpha.
okay, it's very
So,
important to note that self-published on Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, uh, it might sound like technically, oh yeah, I'm published or self-published, but like it's not like being published with a actual
like
publishing house like
Penguin, yeah.
Simon and Schuster. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've made more than 100 books, like in all the stuff that with all the stuff I have on Amazon, which is I only have like four
But,
things on there, technically, like 3 books
but
and
it's still cool that you could go off your bookshelf and pull out a book. I don't know if it's hardcover or softcover, but it has your name on it and it's something that you've written. Like that's pretty cool. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, that's it's a nerdy take, but I would feel kind of accomplished, even if it's
yeah, I
wasn't a
mean,
bestseller.
yeah, I think one of my books is ranked like number 43 million out of, like, you know, 43 million was probably pretty good in a way, I guess, if there's billions of books. But yeah, like Amazon makes it easy to self-publish, and we could probably go over that in like a future episode for sure. We could really dive into it. Um, I will say though, I think it's like with Amazon publishing there, like you're one out of quite literally millions of people that are self-publishing. So there's a lot of competition. So you you can't like unless you've got like a large or an existing fan base, or if if you're good with marketing on social media, that's super important because you have to do all your own marketing with Amazon. And it's certainly worth it. I mean, either way, it's worth it. Just throw it out there and see what happens over time. You know, but we should definitely go over that in a future episode. I think we're actually almost out of
I think that
time
would help.
today.
Okay, because that would definitely help. That would help me because I've started it, but I haven't really done it. But other people who actually listen to this would, find that interesting if they're interested in like publishing stuff like that.
True. Well, I think we can start off with that next time around, I suppose.
Works for me. That works for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's all the time we have. I have been Todd, and you can find me on Google my name. You might be able to find me, maybe. My own website is just toddbyron.com. Social media, Todd Byron. Just on Twitter though, I don't do a whole lot other than that. Feel free to I don't know, DM me if you have any questions or whatever. How about you? What's your
Uh,
deets?
well, I've been Andy this whole time. It's been fun. All of my social media and website will be in the link in the description, because off the top, it's my website's a Wix website, so it's Andrew Camara at Wix.com, but it's very confusing. So I'll just put it in the link in the description, because sometimes it doesn't pop up if you Google my name. It's weird.
Mm.
And then I have social media. I have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So feel free to reach out at any point in time, and tell your friends about us, and if you know anybody that is interested in writing, also let us know, because we could feature them on a future, episode. And I appreciate you listening. That's the main thing, for sticking around for this first one.
Yeah, definitely. And if you are an up and coming writer and you possibly want to come on the show at some point, let us know. Leave a comment. And also, if you're a viewer and you want more of what you're seeing now, subscribe and ring the bell for notifications, because
Yes,
this is this isn't something you want to miss. Trust me.
Yeah. Be on the lookout. I think we're going to create our own social media page. We're going to have our own YouTube channel eventually too. So
yeah, and
so you don't want to miss any of it.
Yeah, just keep your eyes out for the writer's block. It's going to be making waves pretty soon. It's going to be trending on Twitter.
And on that note, I think it's time to sign off.
Yeah, on that note, it's been cool. It's been real. It's been real cool, actually. We'll see you guys later. Take care.